And we're back.
She's from Arya Samaj.
If they keep this up for very much longer, people are gonna freak out.
What kind of parties?
Come together in their little hot box.
What do you think of Jen?
Everything she does and says is that she's just too smart for everyone.
How would we get done with your bullshit?
The principles are on the edges. You're either a tolerant Greek or a moralizing Jew.
He'll regret trolling me like that. This level of shitty fucking behavior.
So that's why we're all here, and that's probably why I haven't listened to the news in 2 days.
Global homo dictatorship, brother fly.
So she didn't prove reincarnation. If it's faith, that's not proof.
I need people's minds on certain problems where I might lack knowledge.
Are you gonna stop? Because as far as I'm concerned, I could skewer you right now and you have zero recourse. This is all happening on my turf, but you owe me.
You're
I'm not. I'm saying that the hormones change.
No, seriously.
So that when
you need to.
reach the
You're all.
The exoteric dictator cannot make mistakes. Ruling people is not about being better than them. It's about service.
You don't get to tell me how to act.
There's probably a nice person who lives across the street.
You're obsessed with Jen and it's all creepy, and you have the audacity called me a weirdo.
It's all so surreal.
This is just awful.
Alright, so you aired that part out, dude.
Hello and welcome back to Church Eventually live streams. I'm here joined today with Ethos Ananda. We had the pleasure of meeting recently. Be joining us today for a discussion about stuff. Why don't I hand the floor over to you, Ethos, and we were going to talk about transcendental geometry, but I actually want to take a tiny trip back. I just want to know how my audio is sounding right now. Is it a little bit scratchy?
There's like a clicking,
Is
like
there
a
hum?
dot, 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 dot.
Okay, I'm going to try to change it. And how about now? Is it still there?
No, I think it's okay.
Okay, great. Let me know if anything changes. All right. Okay, and in the audience as well, if there's still any remaining background. Okay, so, why don't you tell us, you said you studied philosophy in school, right?
Yeah, I wanted to minor in it, but I got to mute the stream here. Or what? No, that's an echo. Yeah, I took maybe in total 6 philosophy classes, 1 in high school and about 5 in college, I think. Epistemology, ethics, artificial intelligence and philosophy, something like that. And 1 or 2 more that really didn't matter, I guess.
Oh, yeah, so I want to ask you if any of the ideas that you were presented with there sort of permeated enough that you can remember them and tell us now, like, if there were any that stood out for you as particularly important or interesting.
So for me, the only philosophy that really matters to me on a daily basis is ethics. And within ethics, there's, to me, ethos and Aristotle's ethics, and then everything else is in a separate category. Now, within that second category, I really like Kant and the categorical imperative. And I also remember John Stuart Mill being really dumb and lame. And I didn't like Hume, and like that's it. Like the epistemology class I took was really difficult and really technical. I think that was a 200 level class, and most of it was really focusing on Kant and how he was getting all his a priori stuff sorted out. But that doesn't actually matter to me on a daily basis, or even as an intellectual. It's kind of like, I think at a point it did matter, but at least for me now, I just I don't care. I'm into theology and ethics. That's mostly it. And psychology. That's it. Those 3 are like my how I do everything is within the umbrella of those 3 things.
Could you tell us what you mean when you say ethics?
Well, this is why Aristotle is in a league of his own, I think. So you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but when I say ethics in English, I think most people are they get a sense of like a dry, cold, calculating like list of laws and just this we should do, this we should not do. And that is not ethics to me, although sometimes it can be like that. But ethics for Aristotle is basically what is a human being, what is the best human being, and how do we go from A to B? How do we just become the best people and then teach others to be the best people? And that's it. That's ethics.
So ethics is how to be ethics is how to be the best person.
To Aristotle, yeah, that's basically it. So I think I mentioned this on Claire's stream. The word ethics in English comes from ethikos in Greek, and ethikos comes from ethos. Obviously, you can like see that in the word. And ethos is character. So ethics is all about character, at least according to basically the West. Ethics in the East is definitely a little bit different, but in the West, in today and in the past, to really do it right means to find yourself, to know yourself, to cultivate yourself, to grow yourself and your friendships, and rinse and repeat and help others do the same. That is an ethical life. And also the continuous study of that practice, meaning like, why is this the right thing to do? Why is that the wrong thing to do? What particular thing can change the context? And you can do hypothetical scenarios in your mind, which I do all the time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what kinds of questions do you feel like you're most qualified to answer?
I'm not sure what that means to be qualified to answer a question, meaning I can just answer questions, and if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it depends on the listener. If the listener is trying to find someone they can just obey and follow without much of their own independent thought, then that really matters, I think, in what I'd be qualified, or anyone is
Nobody
qualified to
thinks
answer.
that. Like even the most servile person doesn't think that. They justify it to themselves. Like people rationalize things to themselves. And the ones who think they aren't being manipulated are probably more manipulated than, because it creates a huge blind spot to think that you're independent.
Well, speaking personally, I would love to be servile, actually. That's never something I've shied away from. But the key is I want to be servile to an actual master, to someone who loves me, wants the best for me, is superior to me. And I guess those three are enough. Like, if you're superior to me, but you just want to crush me, then I better get out of here.
And how would you react to a person like that? Would you still respect them as a master, or would you just avoid them, or what do you think?
Well, it depends. I mean, if they're superior to me, but they're tyrannical and they have nothing really to offer me, then I will just ignore them or fight with them or just basically get out of there. But if they're, superior to me, they have some ego problems, but, they have some goodies that I want. It depends. I mean, sometimes you can, make a little concession or not. So that's where ethical thinking comes in, is where is the line drawn, sort of thing, but if someone's superior to me and they, like my father, for example, not my actual biological father, but the idea of my father, who loves me because he's my father, and wants what's best for me because he's my father, and superior to me because he's older and more experienced, that is a real naturally servile, whether I like it or not. And if I have a good father, then good things will come of this. And of course, if I have a bad father, then it gets very complicated. Teacher-student relationship is also the same, and spiritual master and disciple relationship is also the same. Martial arts master and disciple. I really love these relationships, to be honest. These are one of my favorite things about being alive is actually having a master or having students, either way. Just being in that discipleship relationship. I think that's where all the magic really happens.
Cool. Scottish Cafe thinks you believe in slavery. No, it's just the disciplic tradition. It's, an attitude of service and respect and honor, and it's very normal in these types of circles. I don't really run with these types of circles myself, but I get it.
I know for many Western people I talk to, they get uncomfortable when I talk about this stuff, and that's a shame. I don't think that was actually normal like 200, 300 years ago, especially in America with all the blacksmithers and artisans and craftsmen just all over the place. Like, that's how you got stuff done. Like, there was many people weren't going to college, so they would, find
you're talking about like a mentorship.
That too. I mean, it depends. Like, there's different degrees of it, right? Like, so I would say I have two masters in America. One is a brew master and a winemaking master, and the other one is a judo master. So because of modern American culture, I never once called them master, and they never once called me student or disciple or anything like that. It looked on the surface like a mentorship, but it worked really well because in my heart and mind, I was completely submitting to them. So when she would say, don't just follow the recipe from online. Try to develop your own recipe by like smelling the malts and imagining in your head what it's like. And I would just say, yes, ma'am. And I would just do it, And the only question I would ask is like about specific things, like within my acceptance of that way to go forward, I might say, I can't really smell. What is this one? Is this like a flower smell? And then she could help me with that stuff. But the process I fully submitted to, and that's why it worked.
Cool. Yeah, it's hard to get that point across because there's no point to really latch on to. It's like, I don't remember ever knowing anybody other than perhaps my grandfather and grandmother. This is back in like Laval where we grew up or whatever, near Montreal, going to a priest for spiritual counsel. It just wasn't done. People will go to shrinks and stuff, but that's more like paying someone to listen to you vent than it is like what you're alluding to, right? Where you're surrendering to the process and I guess it's hard to explain how anything other than respect and I guess servile flattery pops into my head as, I don't want to think of it as a pejorative, but servile flattery, anything other than like willful submission to a master is actually disrespectful. And that you showing respect to other people, if I was going to model it for like explaining how it works, is like there's a certain social order that you sort of give them a portion of what you give to this like hypothetical guru, right? This like supreme guru that, garners everybody they encounter instant submission, right? It's like an archetypal, the thing you would have no hesitation about worshiping, the entity or whatever. So anyway, yeah, it's like your grandparents, the older someone is, the more respect they're supposed to get. It's like a trade-off because it's shitty to be old, right? Just like everything's pretty self-explanatory because it's like it just works, right? Like if you're getting shit on when you're old, your life is like a ticking time bomb of just progressively getting worse. But if you're always getting more respect as you're getting older, then yeah, you're just like, yeah, shit, man. I don't mind being grandpa because all the kids are like, yay, I wish everybody could have that.
Yes, yes. There's a natural aspect to this. So, who is it? Someone said I'm into slavery. It's a funny comment because
They
and this
can't
is
distinguish between slavery and submission. That's what it is.
well, it's not actually a huge difference. I would basically say slavery is involuntary submission, and a good kind of submission is voluntary submission. But either way, yeah, it involves submission. So, well, Aristotle talks about this a lot, and it's something I still kind of struggle with. Like, he talks about a master-slave relationship that happens within our soul, within like different parts of our soul, like the animal appetite desire part of our soul should be a slave to our rational, reasonable part of our soul. Um, but I think this is how just it's been translated over the millennia. But what he really is talking about, he's not talking about what we think of as, okay, on the one hand, he's talking about an ideal person where the animal part really is fully enslaved to the rational part. I think that's actually a solid case. But for most of us, it's more like what I'm talking about with my brewmaster, where it's like, like she's like in a superior position. She's won like first prize in contests all over the state, and she's like older than me and more experienced. So like I'll submit to her wisdom in that sense. But if she says, go jump off the bridge or whatever, I can't fully submit in that sense.
Oh
right?
my god, that's hilarious. I totally feel where you're coming from. Like I literally I can't relate more, like I love being respectful of people, and I really don't like to have to correct their behavior, because it's like life is just so much easier and more pleasant when you have a helpful demeanor. So, people are tripping out in the chat. There's a total culture clash, right? But what it is, submitting to it's a submission is human urge, and it's going to go somewhere, right? But not always going to go to the same place. So you want to do the submission to the the thing that's not going to let you down, the supreme ideal, your what have you for your God form. And you can see traces of that divinity in people. But as soon as you start identifying that divinity within an individual, it's not really the actual essence of the lesson.
I would actually say,
is my point.
Right. I would actually say submission is a virtue. Just like so Aristotle lays out just a groundwork, and he says it himself.
No, it's more of a human passion than a virtue. It's only a virtue if it's properly applied. So like in its pure form, it's just a human impulse or what have you.
Maybe it's not it's not as much a virtue as like bravery is or generosity. It's not a classical virtue in that sense, because then it would have been mentioned by others. But there's a golden mean here, though, where you submit too much in the wrong way at the wrong times, and you suffer, and you submit the right amount to the right people in the right ways, and you are blessed. So in that sense, there's an ethical component to it, at least. Maybe we won't call it a virtue, but there's a golden mean to it for sure.
Well, something is a virtue when it's always good, and something is more a human passion when it's like just as often good as it is bad, or potential for it to be bad is just as high as potential for it to be good. Like take something like your times tables. You remember learning those in school? Did you ever have to do that? Like 4 times 5. Like I went to a French school or whatever, so my parents wanted me to make sure it was bilingual. So we do these combat tab, which means the table competition where you just have to like do multiplications in a lineup. You know, if it literally felt like you're going in front of a firing squad, you had to just like line up all together, and it was like 8 times 4. Ah, don't kill me. So like the ability to do long or multiplication division, that's a virtue, right? That ability is itself intrinsically virtuous. Even if it's put to the most barbaric application, it's still going to be, you're going to be better at the barbaric application than somebody who didn't have as much analytical capacity, right? Like it's just categorically good to know your times tables. It's not like there's a golden mean and it's like, oh, I gotta know my times tables up till 12 and then I don't have to know them anymore type thing. Like it's a benefit to know how to do. And we got people doing stuff in the chat now. We got multiplication tables. Yeah, I only know up to 12 times 12. Public school system let me down, guys. But yeah, I think it's really important to go over these ideas because like I've been talking to Claire for a while and I guess I'm a bit stupid in a way. I give people the benefit of the doubt way too much sometimes. And, trying to get her to learn very basic concepts to like improve communication has proven quite futile. And I spent probably months on this idea that the absence of vice is not the same thing as virtue. Do you agree with that?
Yes, but, I have to, I know what you're getting at when you talk about earlier about the times tables, but there's a fundamental difference between our definition of virtue. So virtue to me, yes, is good, but it is a golden mean. Like essentially that's what it is a golden mean between two extremes. Now, the kind of thing you're talking about, which is always good, that is, I would put that in a different category. That's a pure virtue or a divine virtue, or I'd have to qualify it in some other way or use a different word. When I say virtue in a technical Aristotelian sense, I'm talking about a state of character, which is a mean between two extremes. And so as soon as you can draw two extremes and find a righteous, good, virtuous path in the middle, which can become a part of your character, such as humility. And in that sense, submission might be like a behavioral aspect of humility. Then it can be a virtue. So Aristotle never talked about humility, but it is the cardinal virtue of spirituality, and it's very common here in the East.
Yeah,
so
there's no spiritual virtue higher than submission to God. I would agree with you on that, because that the way it feels to intend that is so blissful, right?
Well, according to my faith, actually, there is one path higher than submission to God, which is
I didn't say submission was the highest path. I firmly believe that knowledge is the only path, not only the highest, but the only path.
Yeah, I didn't mean path.
I still think submission to God is the highest virtue, because that is the way by which the knowledge comes.
Right. So yeah, I didn't mean path. I meant to, respond to what you said directly, which is the virtue, the highest virtue in God. Well, in my faith, we call it love, actually, because if you fully love someone, submission is actually already there, implied, and love goes one level higher in that you're already submitting to God in this instance, but you on top of that will go out of your way to give him a gift or to make an extra sacrifice for his sake, as opposed to just your own sake of, oh, please don't hurt me.
Yeah, you said a lot of stuff there. I wanted to sort of parse through it. I think it's a really important question, because like there's this taboo about it, about submission.
Oh yeah, but that's a Western taboo.
Yeah.
You really, yeah. I haven't noticed anything like that here in the East, where like people might get uncomfortable about it, but it's not a taboo. It's a different kind of like thing here.
It's hard to convey that to people, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm caught between two worlds.
It's like you can't go home and be like, you're harshing my vibe with your defiance of the Almighty, right?
Yeah, can get in trouble there.
I get it. I just try to lead by example. It's like people. It's not on most people's radar, and it's kind of not really necessarily my place to put it on their radar. And if it's on their radar, hopefully I will be too. And if not, whatever. Eventually they'll find someone who can help them out. And I kind of like the laissez-faire vibe. But yeah, we were going to talk about transcendentalism, or see, like when you say something like transcendence, I've heard the word used so few times that I don't even feel like I have a definition for it.
Right. So one thing I was doing is looking up a dictionary definition for this word. I can share with you if you like.
Well, I mean, if whatever's in the dictionary, I care more about what you think it means, because we got to use the definition relative to the conversation. Even if I don't even care, I'm so hardcore. I don't even care if the definition you want to use doesn't match up with the dictionary.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Because, like, to me, I feel like there's been so many effing miscommunications of the ideas surrounding moksha that I'm just like pissed permanently about it. So I want to make sure that there's enough distinctions that the whole thing makes sense. Because, like, Claire one time told me that because somebody had read a lot of books that they were enlightened. And it's like, I don't want people making those category errors, because it's going to torpedo the whole thing.
So fortunately, with definitely Eastern languages, Sanskrit and Chinese namely, but even with English, if instead of just trying to hash out what our definition is with our own language as we have it now, if you go more backwards to the etymological origin of the word and you understand it within that context, that can help just as much, if not more. So moksha is I haven't studied Sanskrit that much, but it sounds like a dual form of a compound word, meaning it's actually two words combined into one, and the way they are combined is where we get the meaning of moksha. Let's do the best of both worlds, right? Let's find out what the word actually means according to Sanskrit, and then also how we're using it and what it means to us. Now with Chinese, this is like so easy, not easy, but it's so clear because the characters are written out in like a pictorial form. So it's like, it's like right there, and there's very little confusion in that sense. But I'll do both right now. I'm at dictionary.com for transcendental, and there's 4 main definitions
only
here.
4? Aren't we lucky?
Yeah. This is this is like one of the most important kind of philosophical words, and there's like nothing here pretty much. So this is really funny actually. So number 1, this is actually what I would call it is, well, transcendent, surpassing or superior. That's like kind of a mess. But then number 2, being beyond ordinary or common experience, thought, or belief, supernatural. Number 3, abstract or metaphysical. Number 4, idealistic, lofty, or extravagant. So you can see just in those 4 definitions, there's so many different ways we can use the word. Like idealistic or extravagant, that's clearly a social use of the word transcendent. Abstract or metaphysical, that's like when you don't know what something is, but you just call it transcendent because it's like, whoa, so deep, man.
Yeah, those people do not know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, I talked to a guy who studied metaphysics in university, and he was a total fry bag. Like, no offense, but he couldn't even tell me. I was like, dude, what even is metaphysics? And he couldn't tell me, and I was like, you're in this class. It was weird. I just think it's a bunch of like bullshit that plays on people's imaginations. It's like I don't know, it's almost like astrology for men, or I don't even know, and women, I guess.
Which thing is astrology for men?
Well, that what we're just talking about.
Like how deep we can be.
Like talking about metaphysics, but not actually knowing what the fuck you're talking about.
yeah, that could be an astrology for men. There could be something there.
It's so cringy to me. I know, like what I care about. Like to me, if you're gonna ask me to define transcendent, I wouldn't use any of those words. I would say transcendent is a state of mind that is imbued with particular qualities. And you can define it as enlightened, but you can also say that it's a state that's below enlightenment because there's several stages to enlightenment, and that's what's important, not LARPing and getting high all the time. Damn it.
Well, the key is to get the real high, not the artificial high. But anyway, there's one word here that actually I would use, which is surpassing. That's what I'm talking about when I say the structure of transcendence, where you have, let's say, two categories like religion and science. Oh, it's this duality. How am I going to get beyond it? Well, you transcend it. So how do you transcend this duality? You surpass it. And there's many ways to surpass it. You can find what's common between two items, and that common element is transcendental. It could be lower or higher or central, right? But it's still transcendent in that it you can use that to escape from the duality, and then you can just go one level higher. And what is the one thing that these two things are subordinate to? And then you can go one level lower to what is the ground on which we get this duality. So that's transcending something. Now, what you're talking about with a state of mind, I would call that transcendence, which is, the state of consciousness where when we are transcending something, we are in a state of transcendence, which is like a flow state on crack, so to speak.
Yeah, this guy in the chat says that you should drop the religion and be skeptical about science and sleep with one eye open. Yeah, living in a paranoid state of perpetual agitation sounds like a lot of fun.
What a horrible life. Really? You want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. People really don't know what they're missing out on. People, it's a real tragedy that people can't enjoy the benefits of religion. So many of them just feel like it's beneath them, I think. And it's sad because it's just like you're really just belittling yourself to speak that way about religion.
Yeah, this is a very common modern Western meme going on. Oh, religion is bad. Now, I'm actually not saying the opposite. I actually agree with these people. Like I've seen firsthand, religious institutions doing just horribly dumb things. That's what my first live stream was about, actually, was how the mosque near me and another one temple, they're just cucking to COVID when they should be doing their job, which is saying, this is God. He will take care of us. We're not going to worry about anything in this material world, which isn't even real anyway. Like that's the fruit of transcendence, when you are actually living that realized knowledge that you are eternal, and whatever is happening in this world is just temporary, and in that sense it's not real. So maybe it's COVID, or it's the war on terror, or anything else. It's just like, it's not a big deal. Like, you can be careful as much as you can. You want to wear a mask, use sanitizer, that's fine. But this idea of being fearful and then enforcing others to be fearful too, this is a kind of evil, actually, I think.
Yeah, there's a cultural rot that causes people of lower karma to attempt to subordinate people of higher karma.
Mm.
And it's just not good.
Yeah,
it's going to end up destroying the West in the end of it. Is that
yeah.
I don't want to say the Karen syndrome, but the like, you know what I mean, right? Like the browbeating.
Yeah, Karen syndrome is a good word for it.
It's going to ruin everything because I don't think people realize like the degree of resentment coming out of some of these people.
I think this is not hypothetical. I think it's happening right now, and it's been happening for decades. And for me, as a very good karma person, by fortune, I'm not bragging. Like, I've done no hard work in my life so far. So whatever's good's been happening to me is definitely from somewhere else. It's from some past life or guardian angel or who knows what. But I've dealt with a lot of, sneaky, vicious people trying to lord it over me growing up. And then now, like this happened earlier today here in Hong Kong. This guy, I go in to ask about getting a coffee and some eggs or something. A little cheat day for me. Anyway, he says, "Oh, I got to show you the mask I actually have here. This is the best way to beat the system." So this is so cheap. You can breathe with it, and it's actually a better mask anyway. This will actually prevent a virus more. It's not porous. This totally blocks everything. So I wear just this thing without the other mask, and most people are fine with it. But this guy in the coffee shop, he says, "Oh, this is against the law to wear that." And I said, "Huh? Really? Like you've read the law?" And he's like, yeah, it's against the law." And I'm like, and I keep questioning him, and I'm like, so like, did you talk to the police? Did they tell you? And eventually he concedes, "Oh, it's not recommended that you wear that." I'm like, so is it against the law and I'm going to get a fine, or it's not recommended? Like, which one is it? I know you're lying to me. And instead of just saying, "Oh, what do you want? Like, how can I take your order?" "Oh, we're full now. You can just wait over there." "Okay, see ya." Like, that's all he has to do. That's his actual job. And instead of doing his job, he said, I'm really afraid, and I need to bring everyone else down to my level too, so I can feel better about being at my low level." So this is
People are
happening everywhere.
people are like kids, They have temper tantrums, and yeah, what can you do, man? Like it's just people are on edge at all times. Like I have this model called cognitive dissonance that I always use, where it's like that feeling when you get disappointed by something, and that's cognitive dissonance. And I just think when people get cognitive dissonance, if they get it serious enough, like it can give you psychosis, basically turn you into a psychopath. Because like people can be pretty good most of the time, and then like this monster comes out because they just got triggered, right? And that's the scary thing about human nature, is that like the scariest thing is already inside you. It's just like this monster that's waiting to be unleashed if you get sufficiently triggered. And it's I don't think it's there for everybody, but I think for people who don't take a step back and go on a meaningful religious spiritual path, like they are weak to that. And so they're never like can you really relax around someone who you don't even know what their trigger is, but you know that it's there, and they're just going to get like ultra vicious if you set it off?
Yeah, that's how I would describe most of my life growing up in New England. I won't say it's true for all of America. It's a huge country, but and my own parents and my sister, yeah, they have triggers all over the place, and it's exhausting. I think what the mainstream media and the propagandists are doing is, first it's just a trauma-based mind control. So they oh, there's an explosion in Lebanon. don't worry about the coronavirus. Look at this. Oh, and it wasn't even like a natural. It was just there. They just had chemicals and it just blew up. This could happen anywhere, right? Think about it, right? You could
It's
be
just
next.
crazy. Like I heard 5 conspiracy theories about it before I even saw the news coverage. I was like, holy shit. The conspiracy theories are ahead of the fucking news cycle. Like I was wondering when this was gonna happen, like this literal space-time continuum is breaking down. Hey, what's going on, Renee? Nice to see you. She wants to know what the F is wrong with New England.
New England is just really waspy and Jewy. That's the best way.
YouTube, please don't cam my channel. He's a Jew. He can say those things.
That's true. Shabbat shalom. I was bar mitzvahed. I can.
He's not a religious Jew. He just to make the distinction, not religious, and we're cool with everything here. So it's hard for people to understand what that means, right? Because you don't see it, and then when you see it, it's impossible to unsee.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like
this is why the brand of America is still very famous and high value with Chinese people and anywhere else. They say, oh, I want to go to America, and then even if by some grace of God they can go to America for like 2 months and they go, wow, it's so pretty, look, I'm eating New England clam chowder, wow, and they just stay on the surface and they never get to see the inner workings of the culture, which is what I'm referring to. So what I mean by those words, which I do honestly apologize for saying, because it's not like, I don't mean any hate by it, but it's just like the laziest way I could have said that. So what I mean is uptight, overly polite when to the point where it gets in the way of honesty. That's really what bothers me about it. And kind of stingy and very ambitious, like materially, which when you combine those three together, it's not a very nice atmosphere to be in, for me at least. Like I'm okay with ambition spiritually, philosophically, etc. Culturally even is okay. But like, just, you got to get into Harvard. That's the only thing about life, man. And you got to be a doctor. Why? Because more money. It's not even like to help people. It's like, well, doctors have the best job and then you get the best money and then the house is bigger. And isn't that why we're all here? Like, you don't get that. So that's Boston, this very pressure kind of culture like that.
Boston?
Yeah, Boston. What are you, effing rich?
I went there way back in the day because I was traveling for work, so I just happened to make a like vacation there or whatever, and got in the cab, and the woman was super friendly and saying might want to go to the Cheers bar. She's like, "Oh, you gotta go to Cheers. You gotta go to Cheers." I thought she was just like hamming it up, but no, I think she's just always that colorful, which I enjoyed it. I didn't grow up in Montreal, but I grew up about like maybe 45 minutes outside of it, so like suburbia. But I still got to really enjoy the culture, and I definitely love certain aspects of it. The thing you're describing is actually not that pronounced where I come from, because it just really wasn't dominated so much by the same kinds of Anglos that dominated in the States.
Yeah, New England has a very precise kind of feel to it. And I mean, urban New England. Like, you can go to rural Vermont to like Cabot Farm or Ben and Jerry's. Oh my God, those places are heavenly. Like, there are definitely some nice places, but yeah, if you're in Boston or the suburbs, like where I grew up, where it's very like high taxes and like everyone's all about, like I said, getting into the Ivy League schools and not much else. But Connecticut sucks. But yeah, I don't like that region as a whole. Whereas the Midwest is much more mellow and chill, and Texas and then California has their own thing. But there are some things that do actually unite all of America, and those things are not good in my eyes. So I'm happy to be away from that.
Really, it was that spiritually taxing, was it? It's so fascinating to hear your story. It's really interesting because, like, I get it. In a way, I'm glad I didn't have to quite live through that same level of tyranny, because there is something really tyrannical about it, isn't there? Like, the Germans are extremely stern, but the tyranny of the Anglos is unparalleled.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. Like in Japan, for example, I lived in Japan for just 3 months as what I'm doing now, like working online and just traveling around. And yeah, the Japanese are world famous for being like, maybe not stern is the right word, but strict, restrained, like reserved, very orderly. And this is actually very different from everywhere else in Asia I've been. Thailand, Southeast Asia, China, India, of course. Like Japan is totally like in another dimension, right? But they're also really good at it, and they in deep inside underneath their skin, they have that same hospitality and friendliness. It's just really hard to see. So yeah, it was difficult for me staying there for a little while, difficult to get used to, but it wasn't tyrannical, you know?
My girlfriend stayed there for 9 months, and she said that the thing she had the hardest time with was the culture of casual lying, and that there's like not everything, but there was this expectation that there would be certain things people would lie about. I don't know if you can go into that more, or if you're familiar with this idea. I'm not, other than what she told me, not super familiar with it.
Totally. That's actually very common all over Asia, and that's one of the main things that bugs me. But it's also the main thing I like about the Chinese. Like when you call them out on their lying, they go, "Yeah, well, of course I lied. Like, I'm just, I had to save my face or whatever." They just say why, then they go, "Yeah, whatever. Like, let's just eat some rice." Like,
I wish Claire was like that.
Okay, anyway, yeah, and so in Japan, this is just really exaggerated to like the nth degree. This idea of like saving face and honor. Like Japan is a very honor-based society, right? So to them, honesty is just not the most important thing. So if they have to lie to, do their job or to protect their family or whatever else, that's not even, it's not even a calculation. It just gets done. That's kind of what I think happened earlier to me in Hong Kong today with the guy at the coffee shop. But it just like, because he looks so Chinese and I'm so used to mainland China where they just like are not that gross. Like it's Hong Kong is starting to get under my skin. Like they're this is why I left China. They're in the middle. They're in like this transition phase where it's like, well, I don't know. Should we cuck? Should we, be brave and sacrifice things? Oh, we'll just like see what happens. And I'm like, this is gross. Like, yeah. So honesty is part of logos to me. That's one of the essential aspects of Western culture is honesty and like that kind of transparency in our thinking and with others. That kind of like virtue is a very Western thing. Which,
yeah, but they're not even all that honest. The deception just happens on the level of self-deception. So instead of casually deceiving other people, you're casually deceiving yourself.
Yeah, which is worse, right?
That's why everybody gets, it turns people into nervous wrecks and makes them neurotic. So it just seems like there's maybe this human paradox where, like, there's an information sort of, I don't want to say paradox, but like a quandary where you want to know as much as you can about other people, but you want to retain secrecy for yourself. So there has to be some balance where it's like the fact that this like cultural dishonesty bubbles up, even if we have a quote culture of honesty, maybe it proves that there's something in the human condition where it's just impractical to be totally honest.
Human condition, yes. Human nature, I think no. Meaning, once you get to the level of spiritual advancement, human character advancement, where you are happy and ready to be honest all the time, just because it's a very comfortable place to be and it's very sustainable. It just means that, it's going to be more difficult for you to hang around with liars, and especially the kind of self-deceptive liars who, at least to
That's like
me,
you're describing the path of like every single sadhu who's just like, I can't do it anymore. I have to go to a temple.
yeah, that's the story of my life right now. So that's my main mission going to Lithuania now. I'm finding my own temple there, basically. Like, it's rural enough where most people will just leave me alone and I can just have my peace. Now, I mean, there are actual temples I can go to and that sort of
No,
thing.
the temple's a state of mind, right?
Yeah. Like, ideally, at the highest level, you have your peace everywhere you go, no matter what. So, like, the Dalai Lama, I think, is at that level, and Eckhart Tolle, I think he's also, in that kind of wavelength, more or less. Like, these, and there's like a few more people that come to mind like that, and then everyone else who's in like some kind of position, which is like whatever, wherever it is, like myself, like I have actually achieved enlightenment, but I'm not like, there's certain things that I'm just not there yet, like compassion at the deepest level, that's on automatic in a very positive way. Oh, I'm not even close to that. Like, that's the Dalai Lama thing I'm talking about. But
You've developed some divine virtues, is what it sounds like. You've developed some and are in control of some divine virtues. Like it's kind of like a pool filling up. It just fills from the bottom, and it seems like there's some liquid in there now because there's something sort of self-sustaining about the whole thing. It's not a LARP.
Yeah. So going with your like pool analogy, there's enough liquid there where like the forces that try to take the liquid back away, it just like the liquid's there, and it
You've
just like,
managed to subdue the monkey mind / whatever you want to call it.
so this is where we can talk about moksha. I actually have the same monkey mind I have always had, but it's detachment. That's the main gift and talent that I've had that gives me more or less a superpower compared to many others. Even my like religious brothers and sisters, like I've seen gurus like lose their cool where I would just be like, what? Like, it's no problem. Yeah, I'm very detached to the material world, and I'm in the process of becoming more attached to the spiritual world. That's what I'm working at. Like, when I'm attached enough where I see any kind of suffering on someone else and I instantly empathically feel it and it hurts me, like that's
not
like,
how it works, though. That's like sort of a misapprehension of like the whole suffering for people. It's not really a.
I don't mean suffer. I'm not suffering for them, but I mean no longer being detached, meaning like I recognize it as like there's just an urge to help others. That's what I don't have. Like, when
You don't ever get an urge to help others. What you
sometimes,
the way no, I can tell you the way that it works is you make yourself so sensitive that you're essentially just as in tune with how other people are feeling that as how you're feeling. And it's at that point that you empathize.
Sorry,
It's,
say that one more time, please.
it's a self-directed thing. You have to withdraw the senses and enshrine a very heightened sensitivity in yourself, which leads to being able to perceive the suffering of others with the same accuracy as you can perceive your own, which gives you the empathy. It directs what you could call empathy, but it's not like a pit. It's not like, oh. It's more just like an acknowledgement of where people are at and sort of seeing that things could be better for them.
I think I actually experienced that before, and then I couldn't handle it, and it was too spiritually exhausting.
Well,
And
you have to. It's like running a marathon. You have to get used to living in that state, and there's a huge process of, I don't want to say divorcing yourself, but you have to let go of what it was like when you didn't think in that state. This is a sustained state. Right. So it's a lot of work relative to where your mind's at now. But once you're in it, it would be just as much work to like change back, right? Because there's a momentum to these things. It's a quantum waveform is how I call it, right? Like they have all the different terms for the various energetic, chakras and what have you, but because of the confusion in that, they just decided to redrive the whole system using literal biology. So there's no confusion about anything. So I'm really happy about that. But yeah, basically consciousness is a photonic waveform, a light crystal.
have you ever heard about the Merkaba?
No.
Merkaba is a ancient Egyptian word, I think, which is their definition of the soul, basically. But where I discovered this was from, what's that guy's name? Drunvalo Melchizedek. I think that's it. Crazy name. So he found, and he says what the ancient Egyptians were doing was uncovering the geometry of the soul and of these like electromagnetic patterns, and what they discovered is the Merkaba, which is a star tetrahedron. It's the six-pointed star, right? It's two triangles overlapped, and I haven't fooled around with this as much, but there is like a little exercise you can do where you visualize you as the Merkaba, and you spin one way and one the other way, and once it activates, and once you're in line with those energies in that geometry, then you get to do all sorts of cool stuff like teleporting and whatever other cool stuff you might be.
Teleporting?
Yeah, teleporting is actually very mundane. It's actually not one of the...
Well, when you can do it, why would you do it? Because you'd want to do something else, wouldn't you, right? Like people can't relate to the state of mind of a sage. What's the point of teleporting, right?
Well, it's fun. It's cool. Why not?
Well, you can do something because it's fun, it's cool. Well, you're not going to teleport. There's way cooler shit than that, right? So you're trying to answer the questions. Was the coolest shit you can simulate with your mind? People instead they presume they know what they would do if they could.
If I could teleport, I think I totally would, because I don't like TSA and like all that crap with traveling. But the work it takes to learn how to do something like this is madness. I mean, it's like crazy difficult.
It just depends on your karma, honestly. Like the reality is that if your karma's not high enough, you're going to get to a certain point where you realize that it doesn't make sense to go any farther, and it's actually good to remain at that level for a while to enjoy the process, because one doesn't want to get to the point of the enlightened state and realize, oh, well, I'm not ready for the responsibility. Are you able to pull up the YouTube video? Because I've got something displayed on there.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to show you. And I realized that it's not screen sharing with you because I'm just directly sharing it through OBS. But the screen looks really good. I actually want you to see the stream because I think you're going to like it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
How's it look? I don't mean the diagram. I mean the metadata, like you in the picture and all the signs on it. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so that is how you could drive chakras. So what it is like photons is light, and photons always go in spheres because the sphere is the maximum entropy state. But because the sphere, do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I just don't know much about the photon sciencey stuff.
Well,
but I can.
You're familiar with the existence of something called light.
Yeah, which are photons.
And light consists of photons, and photons are defined as quantized light, i.e., light is not a continuous thing. It's a bunch of individual, what they call quanta, which they define as photons. Mm-hmm. So you could you could theoretically reach a point where you can't subdivide it anymore with light, because you'd eventually reach one photon. That's the sort of metaphysical or what have you important aspect of it. But you're never dealing with just one photon. You're dealing with tons of them. Like if you think about how much the sun gives, even just daily, right? It's blasting, zillions of photons, right? And so we're eating food, obviously powered by photons. And photons have a particular geometry, which is basically expanding like a sphere, like a balloon. I don't know if you can visualize that, but like if you imagine a balloon blowing up, light travels like that. And when it touches something, it collapses from a balloon type shape. So it's like a bubble popping. It's a little bit difficult to visualize, I think, but that is actually how light propagates. And the reason it propagates in 3 dimensions like that is because there's no preferred dimension. Like all the dimensions are basically equivalent. So it just goes into whatever shape is the way to describe it in physics is it minimizes the net torque, but basically it's a shape that's the same in all directions. Samyama, right? Spherical is maximally samyama. So because light is just a basic building block, it's going to have the simplest samyama, which is the entropy is going to dictate its progression, which is going to be an expanding sphere. But because we occupy a particular physical location, the sphere is going to be constrained to our biology, right? Which is not a sphere. We have spheres in our biology, like our eyeballs, but we are not ourselves like literal rolling around on the ground spheres. But our consciousness is a sphere, which is itself kind of crumpled into our body. I don't know if you can visualize like a sphere crumpling down to fit into a body, but it's still like the sphere is basically what's propping the body up so that it's not like a shriveled lump of nothingness. It's like the inner essence that emanates and like causes the tautness of the skin.
Mm-hmm.
So this is literally a light field, and it's fueled by the food that you eat. So this is sort of I think this is the link people have had a hard time making because the consciousness is like not the questions of consciousness haven't really been answered. But yeah, basically, can you see the diagram? How there's like the spine going up the diagram? It's like a sort of slithery shape.
Yeah.
So what that's doing basically is holding, like, because a sphere, if light just expanded as a sphere, all the light would end up at the perimeter of the sphere. So just go out and out and out, and there'd be nothing in the middle because it's a wave, right? It's traveling outwards. And because the wave is constrained to the body, like it can't just float away, it's bound to the body. If this gigantic light field was just expanding away, you'd have a tremendous saturation of energy at the perimeter because it's essentially spinning, right? Like it's not really spinning, it's more vibrating, but it's like it's moving. It has intrinsic motion. And because if it weren't folded, it would create the possibility for electrical discharge across itself. So in order to minimize the probability of electrical discharge, because obviously in life you don't want that, it folds onto itself. And the spine is basically the support system for that folded light form. So that's what I try to illustrate in that diagram there. So I'm happy to be able to share it with you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, this is neato. what I'm most kind of attracted to is the how to call it, like the, it's not exactly a Vesica Pisces, but like the right near the top chakras. Jeez. I mean, like, I don't know. It looks cool, but it's Greek to me. That's all I can say. I can definitely share with you my Vedic understanding of the soul and consciousness and how all this works, which is similar, but the Vedas seem to draw a definite distinction between the soul and consciousness, meaning like everything we have is falls under consciousness, but all of consciousness is actually just a symptom of the soul, you know. So
well, they go about it completely differently. Like the metaphysics is just completely different, right? Like if you look at Ayurveda, which is medical science, for those of you who are interested, like their model basically starts at Prakriti and Purusha, and it's like a cosmic, like what the hell is this? Like, is it cosmic mind? Is what the hell is it? Like, it's these are basically abstract concepts that don't translate very well. So what you're saying is there's a distinction between two translated words, but I'd have to actually go back and check what the original quote was. And I understand there's been a lot of differing opinions on this because you're talking about probably the most difficult thing to measure out there, right? So there's obviously going to be some pretty big conflicts of interpretation, which is why I did what I did, because I want to at least give one interpretation that science is going to support, right? Like these energetic centers do exist. I can point to them. I can tell people why they exist. And if you want to call them chakras, go nuts. But really what they are the nodal points of the quantum mind where it has to fold in on itself. Kind of like a balloon, you know. I don't know if you've ever seen those clown balloons that they fold up, but it's kind of like that because it needs to contort into such a shape that it minimizes the probability of any electrical discharge. And if you have a bunch of energy, it's at the perimeter of a sphere, well, that's going to increase the probability of a discharge. So it has to sort of spread out somehow throughout the sphere. And it does that by bending or twisting on itself over into itself. And that's eventually what gives you the array of the spine, is this complex twisting.
That definitely makes sense. The chakras are energy centers, right? So that's where the energy is most dense in the subtle body, and it totally fits in with what you're saying of like you know, folding in on if the light will be folding in on itself more and more, that is synonymous with an energy center, a center where energy is more dense. It's the same thing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to do is like use the laws of physics to derive these metaphysical constructs that there's been some debate about. Because like when you got some people saying there's one chakra, and some people saying there's 4, and some people saying there's 7, and some people saying there's a million, there's obviously going to be some people who are going to look at that and say, well, that's just ridiculous, right? Like it's not consistent. And obviously, if people actually understood all the various interpretations, took the time to learn the history, like it would definitely make sense and they would see the value of it. But I know people don't have that kind of time or inclination, so I'm just doing like a quick and dirty of like, you want to laugh at it, but there's actually science there. And even if the models are wrong, they're still scientific, right? Like a model can be wrong and still pass the test of science. I'm not saying the models are wrong, by the way. I'm not saying the models are wrong. I'm saying even if they are wrong, they can still pass wrongness is not good enough reason to discard something just because you decide that it's wrong because there exists multiple interpretations of the chakra thing. Well, that's obviously because the nature of the underlying question, i.e. consciousness, is itself extremely complicated.
one thing. So yeah, you're right. Like for the average, modern person, especially Western, that sees, all these different, Eastern and New Age things with all these different conceptions of it. Yeah, if you give them something with more, I guess, shoe leather, something more scientific, it'll be more readily accepted. But to those who don't understand Eastern culture, which is just about everybody, I would just say that what are the Vedas? What and where does this come from? It comes from only a few places. One is revelation, that is a divine demigod, angel, God himself, whatever, just imparts the information, just gives the information to a sage, and the sage writes it down. That accounts for some percentage of the Vedas. Another percentage is yoga, meaning somebody
The
is
Vedas were 100% revealed, and then they're propagated through remembrance. So Shruti and Smriti are your orthodox, standard, accepted means of knowledge. There's actually nothing outside of those two. When you're talking about like traditional religious knowledge.
In the most traditional classical sense. But I now I'm talking more about Eastern. It's not really Eastern culture, but like Eastern wisdom culture, I guess. It is scientific, but it's a different kind of science. So what I mean by yoga is it's someone who does work in themselves, and that work is in line with previous revelations and their own communities and whatever else, and they write that down and pass it on. So that's actually modern hatha yoga and Ashtanga yoga too. I think it comes from a sage who just kind of figured it out. Now, they didn't speculate it, they didn't just make it up, but they did actually do a lot of the work themselves, and it became a thing because it was later verified by others and so on. So the chakras, these, and Ayurveda especially, like the doshas and how food affects you, like you can verify, it's scientific in that you can verify all this yourself by your own experience. But this, to do that kind of scientific verification requires, for many of us, decades of work, of spiritual work, meditating every day, eating a clean diet strictly for years. But once you are able to do that, then yes, you can easily start to verify these things. And for example, I have noticed the 7 chakras in myself. And I know there are many. There's like the Chinese system has the meridians, the energy channels, and those are in the hundreds or thousands. So I haven't even started even trying to sense those. But the main energy centers, I feel them every day because, like, I don't even try to. It's like it's just part of me, and in my process of trying to understand things, it's just these chakras just work better to just understand myself and what's going on. So, like, going back to the guy at the coffee shop earlier, like, that is a classic example of solar gut chakra, you might call it. And that's why it bothered me. If it activated a different chakra, it'd be a different experience, and I'd feel it differently and I'd respond to it differently. And
oh my God, you have no idea, man. I have avoided this conversation my entire goddamn life. But I'm actually happy to have it with you.
Why? What?
You're serious. Well, most people are just dabblers, and you're actually open to what I'm saying. So usually people are dabblers who are not open to what I'm saying, and you're not nor a dabbler, and you seem reasonably open to what I'm saying. So I appreciate it. Just want to say that was special.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for coming on. Someone had a question in the chat that I wanted to address, which was eternal entropy. He's asking, whoops, here, I got to go back and check here. He says, are the nodal points aligned directly in the spinal fluids and network or other? I don't know what you're talking about, dude. That is not a proper sentence. So you're asking the nodal points aligned directly, like you got to understand the difference between the body and the mind, okay? The body is a projector. It functions as a single entity, okay? When you're looking at individual neurons, those neurons are part of a neuronal matrix that simultaneously projects the quantum mind. There's no it's not the inter nerve signal you should be thinking of. It's the whole projection of the central nervous system of the mind, and that's where the information is being processed, and then the information is going back into the body from the mind. So in terms of whether spinal, like what is the relevance of spinal fluids? Spinal fluids is like, you know, the oil in your car. It's like, it's a car, you know, versus a, you know, person in the car. So consciousness is not super much affected by spinal fluids. I mean, what you could say about your physicality is that if your body is fucked up in some way, there's going to be it's going to have a hard time projecting your mind, i.e. depression. You know, that's when you don't have enough energy basically in your mind. You're just, you know, gray, listless, etc. Right? So I want to answer your question, but to me it makes no sense. Or network or other. Like, I think what you're asking is a question ultimately about how does information travel? And I want to get to that answer. I want to give a meaningful answer. But before that answer will be meaningful, you got to understand that geometry. Like that sphere, you got to see that sphere in your own mind. And you got to follow me through the steps of the explanation so that everything works out. And then you'll be able to come to the conclusions on your own because you're going to actually see it unfolding in your own mind. Like, it's all perfectly logical. It's just, yeah. You got to build it up step by step. And information is something that is very important, but it's like time. How do we really define information? Which is, I'm blogging about that right now. So you can have a look at that soon. But I am glad to see everybody's interested in the chat. People are being pretty nice in the chat. Like, I have a pretty good chat vibes, I think. Like, I haven't seen anything disrespectful at all, but people seem to be actually interested in what we're talking about. So that's kind of nice. They said Zoroastrianism. I had a friend who was a Zoroastrian. We used to meditate together. He's a good guy.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't been following the chat closely. I just like glance at it.
I think it's the middle of the night in the States, so it's like not that many people watching, but the people who are there are pretty much regulars. And yeah, I'm glad with the way the channel's been going because there hasn't been any problems whatsoever with trolls or anything. Thanks, everyone. You proved that it's possible to have a YouTube channel without trolls. I shouldn't speak too soon there, but, you know.
I'll just jump back to our main topic on transcendence, because this word pops up many times in the Gita, and there are just 3 classes of transcendentalists. That is the kind of person who is pursuing or practicing transcendence: the jnani, the yogi, and the bhakta. And I'm curious, Jen, what you think about using this idea of 3 classes of transcendentalists and applying that way outside of just pure spiritual stuff. Because that's why I really like the Gita, and why I like Ethos, Aristotle's work, because it's great by itself, but it also, like, it applies to like everything else. It's like a truly universal geometry, really, is the best word. So quick for people who don't know, Jnani, this is where we get the word Gnostic. It's Jnani. Here he's saying it means impersonalist. I think that's unfair. Jnana means knowledge, basically. So it's someone who transcends using knowledge, philosophy, etc. Yogi is a meditator, or martial arts would be a kind of yoga. And bhakta is devotee, or like submission, as we were saying earlier, just being a loving and genuine kind of disciple. So I think you can use these three classes and these three ways of transcending for literally everything else.
Yeah, but you have to sneak it in through the back door because of this whole aversion that the West has to certain modes of thinking. So I'm basically like trying to encourage people just to approach it as a knowledge and philosophical practice and to leave the other things to the side, and they will just happen spontaneously, because bhakta is something that the laity is just always going to do. They just love to worship. So it's not like you have to tell people to worship. They'll just do it when it's a compelling enough proposition for them. I think the knowledge path is the most important path, because to go into the mystical subtleties of yoga, the size and position of the Western ego is just the risk outweighs the reward. Like, why?
Yeah, most of the time I think you're right, although I will say one of the best experiences in my entire life was actually in the dojo doing judo, which is technically, we wouldn't think of that as yoga or meditation, but it is. It literally is. It is.
Well, it's a discipline. It's a discipline. Is it going to give you enlightenment? That's a different question. Like, I don't think anyone ever made the claim that they got enlightened through judo.
You can, though. That's why this is one of the greatest experiences of my life.
But is that a claim? Is that a claim that you want everybody to believe in? Is that's possible? Like, I just think it's kind of setting people up for disappointment.
Well, I mean, how many people, if I do make that claim and then someone says, oh, all right, and I'm going to go find a judo place, I'm going to do it for 10 years, and I didn't get enlightened and you screwed me over. Even if that happens, like, they did judo for 10 years and they became a much better person in doing so. So, I mean, like, the kind of person who is so hungry for enlightenment that they're just going to jump on what I say or what anyone else says, they will eventually get there. No, and it could be in any sort of crazy way. So, like, I would just say, look, judo is not like a religion in the sense that it by itself explicitly, it cannot bring everyone to the highest enlightenment, but it's a transcendental activity which has a philosophy to it, a physical component to it, which is important. You can get healthier and so on, and there's a spiritual component too. So, like, one thing you'll never see is a judo black belt, I don't know, doing just like wanton aggression and violence. These guys are and girls are very chill. They're the most chill people you'll ever meet, because they know so deeply how possible and easy and effective it can be to just use nonviolence and use the energy of others against themselves in the way that we don't need to do anything ourselves, really. We don't need to say, oh, I am this big thing and I am going to act in the world and cause change. It's like, no, nature is doing this all by itself. We just want to, like, wait for our time, give it a little nudge, and the rest just does it by itself. That's kind of the philosophy of life that you can derive from judo.
Ox Stone is in the chat. He's asking, how do you force your mind to cobweb?
What is cobweb?
Eternal Entropy said, Tetris and cobweb your mind. That I find is best for memory problems. I believe he's trying to convey a method of enhancing memory. I mean, memory is important for sure. It's like people kind of don't get a vote as to what works. So it's like, to me, I feel like I'm trying to answer the question, like, how do we present this to Westerners in a way that it's actually going to be useful for them?
Well, I got to say, I mean, I'm in a different position. I've been here in the East for so long, and I really would like to stay here, or at least on the easternmost section of the Western world. But for me personally, like I put effort into my character, meaning like I want, as a person, I want to be friendly and like witty and truthful and like good enough so people will, at if they don't like what I'm saying, they can at least kind of say, oh well, that's his view. I focus on that more than like this, like getting the package just right, because I know exactly how petty so many people are. Like, even if you get it perfect, there's going to be so many trolls and so many dingle dongs that'll just say, well, maybe it was good, but the timing isn't right. I'm going to go click somewhere else. So like, I just find it way more, for my own peace of mind, to just say the truth, and then y'all do with it what you want. Like, it's not the most effective marketing strategy, of course, but at least like my whole life is just way peaceful, and like that's not something I really care to change. I don't know what can justify really changing that.
Yeah, I guess I feel like I kind of have to set some kind of quality standard. I mean, I don't want to like peer pressure people, but if they're going to pursue it, I want to set, high standards, because the LARPing is just, it's really counterproductive, right? It's just not good.
Right. So I think what I'm saying is, as an anti-LARPing methodology, is it's it's kind of a Jordan Peterson thing, but just say the truth and forget the rest. So that way there's no, like, anyone who accuses you of LARPing is just like, to everyone else, it's just like, it's nonsensical. It's just like, it has no gravity to it, because it's just so obvious when someone just tells the truth all the time with no expectation of result. Like, it shows. You may not want to see it, but it has a vibration to it that you can always pick up on. And I think humans are actually designed to pick up on honesty in a very deep and unconscious way. And the best we can do is just repress that instinct, but it's always there. I don't think it ever fully goes away.
Yeah, I think you could make a pretty strong argument for that. Is you can argue that the human animal was selected for intelligence, because we outcompeted physically larger and stronger animals through our higher intelligence. So to whatever extent that worked, we are selected for the purpose you're describing, i.e., like recognizing someone is telling the truth.
Within the social sphere, yeah, it's absolutely essential. I know there's been studies on like chimpanzees and like how they can measure facial expressions and others. Like, oh, here's what I'm thinking of. It's the brain, like the amount of what's the word, square footage in our brain that's devoted to just picking up on micro muscle movements in someone's face. It's like the vast majority of our visual cortex. Because if we're in a tribe, and we're cavemen in a tribe, and you misjudge what someone else says or what their meaning is, that could be life and death. So like, yeah, this is something that's like a very deep part of our nature. I know evolution is like, the common thing now, but for me, it has zero place in my life. I'm Ethos Ananda, so there's what Aristotle says, and there's what Srila Prabhupada says, and that's it. Humans are rational animals, that's Aristotle, or we are religious animals, Srila Prabhupada. That's it. Like, I bounce back and forth between those two definitions. You can say how that works with evolution if you want. I personally don't care to. I think just focusing on being rational as best as we can, and being, quote, religious, unquote, which doesn't mean, oh look, I put on the clothes of a priest. That means I'm a priest, and I have blind, stupid people following me. That means I'm really religious. Yeah. No, it's like, the spiritual, God, transcendental yearning. That is like a human thing that no other animal can do. So that's human in the ultimate sense.
Yeah, awesome. I'm getting a little hungry here, so I'll probably wrap this up soon so I can go eat something. But it's really been great chatting, and I hope we can continue the conversation at a later date, because I love going into these topics. And thanks to the audience a lot for participating. Really appreciate the questions. Eternal Entropy, please work on phrasing your questions a little bit more clearly, because I'm having trouble understanding your meaning. Did you want to give us any final words, Ethos, before we say goodbye?
I'll just write down my website here in the chat. You can check that out. Check out my YouTube page. And besides that, I just like, yeah. I had a great time chatting with you, Jennifer of the Church of Entropy. I don't know how that church is going to stay around for a long time if it's based on entropy, but
Womp womp.
yeah, I don't think we only talked a tiny little bit about transcendence, and yeah, hopefully we can really produce something next time, like a model or a meme, so
yeah, sounds good. I look forward to it. I think that it's normal to sort of have a bit of more of a banter chit chat conversation, just to sort of get to know each other, so that when we start asking the deeper questions, that there's less chance we're going to misunderstand each other. So I totally appreciate it. And yeah, I think it was beneficial for everyone. I mean, I think people are just chilling out, just listening in, and they'll be happy to see how the conversation progresses. You're more than welcome to come on Week in Review, which is Sunday Eastern Standard Time, 8:00. And we can stream another time, whatever works for you. If this time works for you, we can do it again next week. I had a great time, and yeah, I can't wait till the next chat that we get to have.
Yeah, sounds great. Is 8 a.m. Eastern or p.m. for the Week in Review?
It's 8 p.m.
Okay, so 8 a.m. for me. Yeah, this time is always good, any day of the week for me. And yeah, I agree. Yeah, like the banter, as you call it, was nice. Like the difference in definition we had over virtue, like that was a really great, that brought out some nice things. That was nice.
Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks to the audience for tuning in. And see you all Sunday, if not sooner. Take care, and bye-bye for now.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so to say, a worthless opinion of...
It's so important that she can't be told, she won't be told that it's wrong. And
bringing it back to Church of Entropy and her attack dog Gandalf the White.
Why don't you learn to shut up and fuck your goddamn logic?
They control the media, and the media is capable of making the sheeple believe in anything.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, we've had these streams, and I've been doing with Church of Entropy, and she's been bringing on new people, and we did those streams on stream etiquette. We walked through the technology.
I have very strongly negative opinions of the kind of Brundle clique.
Is she trying to garner herself cult prestige by associating herself with a retard?